Joining me now is writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Esther, the layers, the parallels, the timing, this is so good. What can we expect?
Yes, I'm really excited for this, and I don't think there's any better person to play this than Joan Collins, who infamously played, or famously rather infamously, played Alexis Carrington in Dynasty, and she really brought a lot of life to that because she was kind of this love and hate character. And in many people's minds, particularly in sort of the British psyche, that is what Wallis Simpson represented. She is the person that stole a king from us, this American divorcee, but yet in the later life, the latter part of her life, while she was effectively in exile, in France, and after the death of her husband, you now see this really charismatic, coercive lawyer in Suzanne Blum, who's now being played by Isabella Rossellini, who's also another excellent actress. And so it's interesting to see how this lawyer effectively wrestles what remains of Wallis Simpson's estate from her. She fires her lawyers, and she increasingly asserts a greater financial control over the wealth that she had from her previous marriage and from her life as basically a socialite, but also from her marriage to the late King Edward. So it's really interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure there are people that will draw parallels with Meghan Markle, as people have done since their exit from the royal family. Obviously, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's relationship hasn't got to the point. Prince Harry was never going to be king. And certainly, Meghan Markle never reached the status where she could potentially be queen. However, it's kind of this now story of people thinking that American celebrities dating British royals is like they're like a biological weapon sent to destroy the institution, because it always happens to turn out this way. They manage to worm their way into the institution, and then chaos ensues. But it's really interesting just from sort of a cinematic perspective, because obviously Joan Collins is an icon in this industry, and I know that she's going to bring a lot of life to this role. It's probably going to tell a story of Wallis Simpson's life that people don't really know or recognize, particularly the latter part of her life, and how quite sad it was. I mean, we really don't understand, the emotional toll that it must have taken for them to exit the royal family and effectively be banished to France, and for her to basically be exiled from everyone, including her family, and dying alone as a woman in the in the 1970s in France. It must not have been easy.
No, it mustn't have. And I have to say, I'm very much looking forward to Joan Collins dressed in 1970s style. I think it's going to be an absolute belter, and I can't wait for it. Now, back to royal reality, and King Charles has given a recent health update. What's the message for the public?
So King Charles has said that he's on the better side of his cancer treatment, which would indicate that he is improving. Now, he said this to a florist while he was celebrating Bradford's status as a city of culture, although many people may disagree with that now. And, he gave this update during a conversation with the florist that handed him flowers. And it's interesting because it kind of draws contrast with what Prince Harry said in his BBC interview, when he said he didn't know how long his father had left, which many people saw as a gross, breach of privacy and a really totally unnecessary intervention, because many people are thinking, oh, actually, is he getting worse? Are they just buying his time? So for the king to actually say this, I suspect is probably in response to what Prince Harry said, but it's also an update for a public that's concerned. And I'm glad he said that. I mean, it's very kind of him to have given us this update, because we know that he's still working hard. We know that Queen Camilla is concerned that he's pushing himself too hard. So for him to say this shows that the treatment is moving in a positive direction, and hopefully we can have the king for a lot more years to come.
And still on the king, we know the King's Duchy of Cornwall in particular is a very successful enterprise. It's been reported this week that the king is now twice as wealthy as his mother. How does that come about, and how is this wealth defined?
So his wealth is defined by all the assets and properties that are held in his name, as well as inheritance from his mother and other members of the royal family. Now, it's alleged that he's worth actually twice what the late Queen Elizabeth is worth. So he's worth around 600 and apparently 70 million pounds, having added an extra 30 million pounds to his wealth since this list was created. So he's somewhere around sort of I think 258th wealthiest person in Britain. But this is just nominal. He can't actually do very much with it. His role as the king and as the monarch, it kind of subsumes his entire life, much like Prince William. All this wealth is just numbers. At the end of the day, they have a place to stay and they have duties to do. I don't think they use their wealth in the way that we would think most people worth that much money would. He certainly doesn't flash it. He's not, buying luxury cars or anything like that. They actually live quite almost like a sort of fishbowl life, which many people actually may not particularly like. You know, what's the point of having all this money when your duty is to others and to your country first and foremost? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, yes, he is worth a lot of money, and the royal estate is worth a fortune, which, you know, Prince Harry and his wife know, because they've benefited from it. Even despite the Netflix deals and all of that, he inherited a lot of money from Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. But on the other hand, when you are in this royal fold, when you are a working royal and you're basically a professional ambassador, you don't actually get to enjoy it that much. And so we have to remember that it's not as glamorous as it seems.
Absolutely. Now, Eurovision was on yesterday, and prior to the big show, the Irish Guard sent a message of good luck. Esther, how important is it in modern Britain, essentially, that the British royals embed themselves more broadly in the culture?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. I mean, that's probably what has led to the success of the royal family. The greater success than sort of in mainland Europe, where you have other royals that are really quite minor players in public life. If only we had the Irish Guard as our representatives in Eurovision this year, because the actual group that represented us, Remember Monday, I don't think are going to do very well. I mean, we're looking at 0 points. So the UK is really struggling with our Eurovision entries for some reason. People are saying it's the Brexit effect. We are well past Brexit. It's time for some good talent. But the Irish Guards, of course, pay tribute to them, and they wish them all the best, as they should. And I'm hoping in future years we can put up better acts, or even the Irish Guards themselves, because this is getting ridiculous.
We should send the Irish Guards. I think they'd be fabulous. On to the Prince and Princess of Wales. They really seem to be back in the swing of their external-facing engagements, and it seems that they're increasingly cementing their seniority. What's the latest?
So Prince William has now been made Master of the Order of the Bath, which is a 300-year order, which basically celebrates, you know, civil servants and military officials that have, you know, shown excellent service and work in their own field. And this is actually the first time that the king is presenting this as the sovereign of this order. So it's quite, you know, it's one of those historic traditions in Britain that actually means a lot. But it's clearly showing that he's sort of moving up and really gearing up to basically take over the reins from his father, because his father was the master of this order back in 2022, before the passing of his mother. And so it's another title and notch on his belt, and he basically is representing more and more of what his father was before he took over as king.
And tell us about the Wild Gala at Kew Gardens. Princess Beatrice looked absolutely stunning. She was wearing Australian designer Rebecca Valance. Perfect outfit for the occasion. What was the purpose of the event?
So it's actually quite heartwarming. So it was this wildlife charity that was started by Queen Camilla's brother, Mark Shan, before his passing in 2014. And the royal family have actually really supported her and her brother's charity in this way. Obviously, it is to do with wildlife and conservation, so it's something that's very close to the king's heart. But it's actually really nice to see other members of the royal family patronizing this charity. You know, this gala was held in Kew Gardens, and it was very lavish. You had dancers on stilts, and you had all this sort of floral decorations, and really making it kind of like a sort of a conservation bonanza, effectively. But that was the purpose of it, and it's really nice to see that Queen Camilla and the rest of the royal family have supported her and her family in this endeavor. And it just shows sort of how you know, the royal family are more than just the king and Prince William and all of that. They're also other extended members of the family. For Princess Eugenie to come and support this is really quite heartwarming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Esther Krakue.